Hello, and welcome to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast. I'm Erin DeVos, and I'll be your host for this season. Join us for insightful interviews that explore the work of up-and-coming independent filmmakers from all over the world. If you're passionate about film and keen to learning about the creative process from the future cinema greats, this podcast is a must-listen for you. Our mission is to provide listeners with the engaging and informative conversations about successful and innovative films, including features, shorts, documentaries, animation, and web series from across the globe. The DCIFF Film Chat Podcast is a unique opportunity for independent filmmakers to have their voices heard in a way no other film festival can provide. You can listen to the DCIFF Film Chat Podcast on all podcast platforms or visit our website at DCIFF-indie.org/DCIFF-podcast. Thank you. Hello, DCFF Film Chat fans. I'm your host, Erin DeVos, and this episode, I am speaking with the filmmakers of INVOLUNTARY. And Chris and Dana both joined me at DCIFF 2024 to talk about their film and as well as the modern day issues that are surrounding the film's topic and going into more of what that means. And without further ado, let's dive in. Welcome, Dana and Chris, to the DCIFF podcast. I'm really excited to be speaking with you both today about your film, INVOLUNTARY. Would you both mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and your nominated film?
Sure. Well, I'm Dana White, and you are?
My name's Chris Knoblock. I'm co-director of INVOLUNTARY. Dana is the co-director, writer, editor, and producer of INVOLUNTARY.
So the story is about a man who's moved from his nursing home and taken somewhere else. And so we wanted to do a story that really, how do we talk about this without telling you? It's almost impossible, isn't it?
It's really hard.
Yeah. Think about that. Essentially, it's just we are working on a series of films. They're all different films, but it's sort of a theme that we're working on right now, which has to do with elder abuse and how moral responsibility of us as a community and how we treat our older adults, and especially in this country. So INVOLUNTARY is the first of those films that we shot. We just shot another one, and we're editing that one now, but this was the first one that we made. It stars Jack McGee, who's a very famous actor you've seen him in many things, including Rescue Me and The Fighter, and he's a wonderful actor. Yeah, so the film really is essentially about what happens when Carlton, the character that Jack plays, has cognitive issues like mid sort of level dementia, and he is then moved from his nursing home. And involuntary actually means involuntary discharge, when actually people take people from various places and put them in places not so nice. So that's essentially what our film's about.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's very powerful, especially with given recent news of some elder abuse. And I'm from the New England area, and so being from Massachusetts, it's unfortunately very common. So it's really great that you guys are speaking out about this topic and making it into a series. And what ultimately inspired you?
Well, I think it started with the pandemic, because one of the things that's so interesting is people don't know this is happening. And it's happening all over our country. And I didn't know it was happening. And Chris didn't know it was happening. And then during the pandemic, we were all kind of sitting around watching television at home. And I started reading some literature about this. And then at the same time, while we were in the middle of the pandemic or the early stages, the one thing that really struck both of us was people were saying things on the news, and I think it was things like, well, only older people were dying of COVID. And I remember thinking, only? How do you say that? Only?
Yeah.
What does that mean? People are dying. That's a terrible thing. And so it really upset me, feeling that the older adults in our communities were not being sort of honored, and their lives didn't matter as much.
Their lives meant less.
And so that was so upsetting to us. And then around the same time, I read an article in one of the big newspapers, I can't remember which one it was, about this subject, which is called basically patient dumping. And I was so horrified by it. And I showed Chris, and he was equally horrified. And we we decided that should be the subject of our next project.
Yeah. So I was as shocked as just about everybody else we speak to about this, because we've done, a load of research into patient doping and what it is. And essentially what it is a lot of patients, particularly ones that have cognitive issues, who don't have immediate family. What happens in some of these places, if they end up in the wrong place, is that they'll drain whatever money they have, and then they're not getting much for that bed. So they get other offers for other beds. And what they do is they look for excuses to get rid of it. Some of the places do it legally. Some of the places do it illegally. It's a practice which is rampant, and it's a practice that not a lot of people don't know about, but a lot of people really don't care. And we finished shooting this one, and when we were finished with Involuntary, we were doing additional research. Actually, it was during the making of Involuntary. Some guy chimed in on one of these forums, and he said, I'm a rideshare driver, and I take about 5 of these. I take one of these a week, where he'll pick up an elder adult, an ER or a hospital, and told to take them someplace, and they won't take them.
Right.
And they have to go to this, like they have to go like 4 or 5 different places.
Right.
They'll end up in a home.
Right. And what happens is the thing that the hospitals are required to keep them, right? But so if they end up back at the hospital, they stay at the hospital because the hospital legally has to keep them. But they're not the same kinds of rules. And there are rules and regulations for some of the nursing homes, but there's ways around these things, So as we were reading, we just became more and more horrified, and just sort of felt like that should be the next thing that we really wanted to focus on. So we're excited.
And we're narrative filmmakers. We're not usually, like, right now we haven't really forayed into documentary filmmaking. We could have tried to make a documentary about this, but we really wanted to make a narrative fictional film about this, because on doing our research, all we found were, if you try to search on the internet or anything about this, you won't see any video. The only video you'll see is like a hidden camera. It usually makes the local news about some local patient dumping deal. But other than that, you'll see elderly actors and actors playing nurses in fictional situations where everything is kind of glossed over. And we really wanted to be with this guy while this whole process was happening. And that's kind of why we wanted to make it a narrative.
And we are narrative filmmakers. Like, that's what we do. So we just felt that we wanted to wanted to blend this idea of the art form of film, which we love and have dedicated our life to, and this idea of social consciousness. And how do you kind of blend those two things together in a way that it's a film that actually stands alone as a film, as a piece of art, but while at the same time, it's trying to tell a story and giving voice to people who just are voiceless in our community. And that seemed like the kind of thing that we wanted to lean into and put our time into.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, that's so interesting. And the fact that you made this fictional story versus a documentary too, because I can imagine, and we can talk about this too, like, were there challenges or obstacles that you came across in this film?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always challenges and obstacles, when you make a film. I mean, the good news about Involuntary we had just we had an amazing cast, which you will see on this film. Jack McGee is, award-winning actor. He's amazing. Faith Taylor plays the nurse, and she's wonderful. Gavin Kerr and Jesse DeFranco are wonderful in it. So we had these wonderful actors. And the thing that was really important to Chris and I, and actually it's always important to us in our work, is that because we tend to want our films to have an organic feel, almost like a documentary, but not, right? Like, so the acting has to feel absolutely seamless. Like, you can't feel like what we're watching are actors.
No.
So that's something that we paid very close attention to. And so it wasn't a challenge because we had these amazing actors. What the challenge was that we're working on a really small budget, with small grants and stuff, and we're very lucky to get those grants. And so we didn't have a ton of rehearsal time, right? So we had to find ways to really bring that organic nature to our actors, to make sure that it really felt like we were there in the room with them and these people were really doing what they did. So I think that the other thing was that we took some risks that we didn't know how we're going to play out. I mean, we we knew we wanted to shoot this film from the point of view of Carlton,
Yeah.
because we wanted people to have a sense of what it felt like to be him. And that was a challenge because we knew that part of his perception, being a character who had cognitive, problems because he was having this sort of dementia, that we knew that that's going to be a real challenge. How are we going to play with that so that people understand the story, but we still have a sort of point of view? So we blended a lot of techniques in order to give you a sense that you have sort of a point of view of him, but not completely.
Yeah.
But just so you feel like you're there with him and that it's,
Yeah, I mean, you like any protagonist, main character in the story, you're kind of seeing the film through their eyes. Well, whatever the experience of the film. And our challenge was, how do you deal with that when the guy, your lead person, can't retain anything? He might see something, but then he forgets about it, and then he kind of zones out and he doesn't aware. So that was a challenge for us, is how do we have him to be the lead of our film? So we incorporated it so that the experience of the film is like you feel like you're kind of in his shoes, where you're suddenly in a different location, you're suddenly here, you're suddenly there, and you don't really know what's going on. So you're confused as well as he is as to what exactly is going on.
Oh, wow. What a unique experience. Like
Yeah.
kind of literally through the lens of him,
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
to a
Wow.
certain extent, yeah.
I think another challenge that we had was there are some powerful people in the kind of healthcare industry who don't particularly lights shined on this particular subject.
I think we weren't really sure when we made this film, and that's one of the reasons you make it as a narrative, right? Because it is fictional. We made it up. It's all from our heads. We didn't completely,
Based on
it's not based on anybody. It's not based on any particular person.
Not one.
It was just kind of this idea of this thing that does happen. So we created that. So we had to find a way to tell that story that was fictionalized, but that also felt incredibly accurate.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about our advocates, Sam?
Yes. Well, I'll get to that in a second. But the other thing too is I think that when we were thinking about the style of the film, the actual, the aesthetic choices that we were thinking of making, we also knew that some of the choices we made were going to be risky, and we knew we were going to really make the audience really pay close attention, and that was not going to be a comfortable situation. So I think that was something that we really leaned into. We stood our ground on. I'm really glad we did. We never ever sort of gave up on that vision. And when we screened the film, people can't, at least what they're telling us, is that they can't stop thinking about it because it gets really, really in their brain. And it's just something that, first of all, they didn't know what's happening in the world. And so it's upsetting. But it's an upsetting thing to watch. And we knew it would be. And we knew that was going to make it difficult for some people to want to watch it. But that's why we made it.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea. And then we did end up having some wonderful people that sort of came into our circle. Sam Brooks is one of them, and he works with long-term care, like in like the National Long-Term Care Organization. And so, yeah, I know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when he saw the film, he was so amazed by the film. And he said, I can't believe you guys have made this film and that you actually are advocating in your film for something that, he and his colleagues have spent their whole life trying to deal with. So he was so excited about the film to the point where we're hoping to, maybe even bring it to Washington, bring it to places and really use it as something that helps to.
That's why we were excited to screen here in DC in the film.
Yeah.
Is that it's kind of like this is where
the center.
Center of government and legislation. So there has been legislation that was being used in the mid 2010s to help protect against patient dumping.
Yeah,
but there are still
ways.
There are still ways in which the system can get rid of people. In a general sense, if a patient leaves the premises for any reason, sometimes
without getting authority to do so.
They get an official discharge type of?
Well, not even discharge. Like, let's say that we're going to go out for the day or they're going to go to me and they don't do it without getting the authorization. They can then be denied when they come back.
Oh.
People don't know this.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. That's what I was like, oh, wow.
That can happen. It doesn't necessarily happen in a good place, but in a place that's looking to do bad things, that can be a loophole. Right.
Yeah. I mean,
so there's a lot of loopholes in all of this.
Apparently the situation is bad enough that a lot of homeless shelters now are putting in camera surveillance systems to check if anybody's dumping patients in the middle of the night and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real problem. It really
But I think, the one thing is just this idea that people have family that are watching over them, right? That's one thing. But if you don't, and you don't know, and you're not in a position where you can actually advocate for yourself, that's when it can be really good, right?
Yeah.
And you have no way of knowing. Not only are you cognitively not aware of what's happening to you, but also
who are they going to tell?
who are they going to tell, right? So there are a lot of voiceless people out there that are really struggling, and so it just seemed like an important thing for us to want to talk about.
And one last thing is that from the research I mentioned that the rideshare driver, that was the kind of inspiration for the next film that we just finished shooting. Was a film about a Somalian rideshare driver who picks up a Cambodian woman and 2 ex-refugees in his rideshare vehicle, takes her from a hospital and takes her back to her nursing home. But the nursing home is giving up her bed. They won't let her back. So this guy has to figure out what to do with her now. So the whole film is basically them having this odyssey where they try to figure out what to do.
And it stars the actor Barkhad Abdi, who was he was the one that was in with Tom Hanks in.
You ever seen Captain Phillips? He played it.
Yeah, Captain Phillips is actually in my town where I grew up. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, I grew up in Underhill.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
yeah. So when the film came out, there was a whole bunch of publicity in Vermont for a while.
Where under?
Underhill, Vermont. Yeah, so like near like Stowe, like that ski area.
Mansfield.
Yep, near Mount Mansfield. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, funny story. Wow, what a small world.
Actor within Captain Phillips, and it's Barkhad Abdi. He was the one that was like, "I'm the captain now."
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Yeah, he played the Somalian race.
Oh, that's so cool.
We're in post production now. We're editing.
And that's even such a unique angle too. Like and I can mention this on the podcast too. Like my mom is an ELL teacher, and so she teaches refugee students, and that's common, like in a way, like not necessarily like the whole nursing home bit, but like always refugees helping each other to try to find that next step and the power of working together, no matter where you're from, because there's so many refugees in Vermont. So that just that story, the film that you just wrapped up, really reminds me of it and can resonate. One of my next questions is like, what is the future of this film? And you mentioned you're building it into a series of some sort, or
it's not really a series so much as they're all individual films. But we just at this point
a collection of films that are based around the same subject.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it. Is that we want to just be able to have these films to be able to show them and be part of sort of our own repertoire.
Yeah.
Because both Dan and I both, we live in Ohio now. We moved there from LA. She and I both work in the industry. And what's interesting is, as part of our lives, we're making the movies that we really want to make, and we're not working for anybody else. So while it's really challenging for us to kind of acquire all the funding we need and to get everything going, we're making exactly the type of movies that we want to make. You ask any filmmaker, even the ones that are really established, a lot of them say their favorite movie they made was their first one because they were totally free to do whatever it is. Which is what I think she and I really, really like.
Yeah, no, it's great for us right now. We're sort of in a wheelhouse that is really exciting for us because we feel we're at the strongest place creatively that we've ever been. Yeah, and making our own decisions. You make your own decisions, you make your own mistakes, you break it, you buy it kind of thing. And that's exactly how we want to make our own films.
Yeah, I mean, film is not exactly like, getting your guitar and writing a song. You get a canvas and you just make a painting. It takes a lot of moving pieces.
A lot of people.
A lot of people and money and everything to kind of have everything come together. But like when it does, it can be a really magical thing. Yeah. We love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, and that's exactly why I love being part of DCIFF and being in independent film, is to truly tell your own story and your own spin on things. So
yeah,
and I love the issue that you're bringing up is just so important. And are you involved in any organizations? Well, you had mentioned one, but to build more awareness into this.
Well, I think that's part of what we're hoping for. We're really, really hoping that this film can potentially, come to Washington, maybe be shown on the Hill, that kind of thing, and to really advocate for some change. There are a lot of really important political people out there who really want this change. They're fighting for this change. They're fighting for older adults, and we would like to be alongside, being the artists fighting with them.
Yeah.
In some way, whatever we can do, whatever we can do to contribute, we really want to.
We really just started the journey publicly. Just a couple of days ago, we had our first public screening of this film. So we're really excited to have DC Independent be able to show this publicly again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, in the heart of, advocacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, very cool. Thank you both so much for joining with me today. How can we whether follow you or follow your film's journey?
Yeah, sure. So we have a website called chrisdanafilms.com. And so pretty much everything that we're doing is on there, and access to all of the films that we make.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
So please follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, chrisdanafilms.com.
Excellent. Yes, looking forward to it and getting back on the hill. So, or on the hill, I should say.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the DCIFF supporters. We could not be here without all of you to be sharing this amazing outlet with filmmakers from around the world. If you are interested in supporting DCIFF, head on over to our website through the link description in the bio of this episode, or you can go right to the website, which is DCIFF-INDIE.org, to connect with us and learn more about our Future of Film programs, our festival, and also more educational opportunities in what we do with our high school students, community, and beyond. We look forward to your support.